and welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and this is the deep dive of the tragic death of Sandra Birchmore, who was a 23-year-old young woman who was expecting a baby. She was about 3 months pregnant, and she was found to have apparently taken her own life, according to the original um, determination for her death. However, a recent forensic pathologist has come forward and reevaluated the case and has determined that it was not by her own hands, meaning someone did it. And we actually have video footage of the individual who is a very likely suspect. His name is Matthew Farwell. He is a former Stoughton police uh, officer. Couldn't think of the word. And he was a part of this explorers program that the Stoughton Police Department had for young kids. I think it's like ages 13 to 20 or something like that, where these kids can come in and learn the ways of law enforcement and, prepare for a future career in law enforcement, basically. So, Sandra was part of this group. The Explorers program. It was run by an individual named Robert Devine, and another instructor there was also Matthew Farwell's twin brother, William. And all three have been found to have had inappropriate relations with Sandra. Matthew Farwell was definitively proven to have had inappropriate relations with her when she was underage, starting at the age of 15 that we know of, or at least can prove. But we believe that the grooming process began even earlier than that. But the relationship took it to a physical level, at least we believe around 15. But that might even be earlier, and we just don't know. We don't have proof. So all three officers have been removed from their positions. They're having hearings. So that's kind of where we're at in the middle of this because these hearings are continuing to happen because some of them want to keep their police certification so that they can go into another town and be police officers, which is awful because these three officers we know abused their power and used that to take advantage of a girl that was under their control and power, whether their relationship with the two others, Robert Devine and William Farwell, if even if their relationships took that to the next level when she was an adult, they still knew her when she was younger. They still could have potentially groomed her, and they still could have potentially just been, using their power of authority over her as well and threatening her with that. So there's a whole mess of things that can be involved in grooming. And I decided to do this episode at the request of one of the viewers who, thank you for that suggestion. They asked me what specifically were they doing to groom Sandra. And unfortunately, we probably won't know all the specifics on that, but we can probably kind of guess because a lot of similar patterns, excuse me, keep hitting the cord. A lot of similar patterns continue to happen in these cycles of abuse, and we're going to learn all about it in this episode. So, we're not really going to talk about Sandra other than how this might relate to her case. But this is going to be more educational about what grooming is, how it, how what it looks like from, an adult perspective looking at, another adult and, from all different angles we're going to look at it and the lasting effects of the trauma that can happen. The individual can endure a ton of difficulties because of traumatic effects in their childhood. So I'm going to try to I've put this information, I've got lots of links and articles that I want to refer to. So we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, but I think it kind of helps um, give us a good idea of grooming and what to look for. So, first off, I want to play this video. So this woman, her name is Katie Morton. Kati is how her first name is spelled, Morton, and she has a YouTube channel, and she does all sorts of different topics. She's a family and marriage therapist. So, but she in this particular video, she's going to be talking about the 7 must-know signs of grooming by a predator who wants to use children in an intimate fashion, physically, and using their bodies. I can't say the S word, S-E. I don't know how the algorithms catch you, but they catch you saying certain words and then they like totally shadow ban your video. So, and I want this to get out because I want people to know and I want people to be aware of what to look for. So, first up, like I said, 7 must know signs of grooming by a predator who is after an intimate relationship with a younger adult or younger child. Sorry.
Before I even define what grooming is or get into this information in more detail, I want you to know that grooming does not occur in all child sexual abuse cases. And also, it doesn't only happen in children. This can happen to us at any age. And I just want you to hear that first before I go into the 7 stages of grooming. Now, to define what grooming is, if any of you are thinking it has something to do with hair, that is not the case. What grooming is the process by which a sexual predator gains the trust of a child or their family in order to start a sexual relationship with a child in secret. And there are many stages to grooming, and honestly, everything I read had similar steps, but some broken into 10 stages, some to 12, some to 4. And so throughout all of the reading and research that I did, I came up with 7 stages of grooming that I think are important and kind of show you the process through which someone gains our trust and uses that against us to do harm. Also know that not everyone's going to go through each one of these stages, and that doesn't make your situation not valid or anything like that. These are just some of the common stages, but everyone's process and everyone's experience is going to be different. The first stage of grooming is identifying the victim. As a sexual predator, they could pick this based on the age or the way a child or teen or adult looks, or it could even just be vulnerable traits. It could be that the parents aren't around. It could be that we have really low self-esteem or have just moved there and are trying to make friends. There could be a lot of different reasons and ways that they identify a victim. And the second stage is gaining trust and access. And I don't want you to think that when someone's trying to gain our trust or access to us, that it's going to be done in an overt fashion. Often the sexual predators are very suave and smooth and may just offer a helping hand. Like, oh, I'll help put your bag in the bus for you. I'll help your mom load up the soccer balls from the soccer game. Or, oh, I'll come over and help tutor you for that. They'll try to do small things that seem quote unquote normal in relationships as a way to gain your trust. And so know that this isn't an overt action. This isn't something that we may notice right away, but it's done as a way to help our parents trust them if we're a child, and that's how they gain access to us, or have us trust them so that they're like a normal adult in our, unit, whether it's our family and extended family and friends. We think of them in a very trusting and normal fashion. The third stage is becoming important to the child or adult and giving them something that they need. This could be through manipulation, by telling the person that they're the only one that understands them and they're the only one that can help them. This could also be with children. They find they give them a lot of gifts. Maybe it's money to go get candy. Maybe it's a toy that they couldn't get otherwise, or certain equipment they needed for sports that their parents couldn't afford. They'll try to give them something or become so important and necessary in this person's life that they feel like they can't live without them or that they need to keep them around. The fourth stage is they will begin isolating you, meaning that they may offer you a ride home. Let's say it's a child that we're talking about and their parents always late to pick them up from school. They'll offer to call the parent and take them home instead. Or if you're an adult, they may say, oh, I'll walk you home. It's really late. That's kind of scary. I'd rather be with you. And they do this so that you are obviously isolated. You're with them and you're more vulnerable in those positions. So just be cautious about who you spend time with when there's no one else around. The fifth stage is they'll begin creating secrecy around the relationship. This could be anything from no one would understand what you're going through, or I wouldn't tell anybody that. They'll start to think that you're weird or odd or crazy, or that something's wrong with you. They may also threaten to harm themselves or a pet or someone else that you love in your life if you
Threats are extremely common, especially like I'll hurt your mom if you tell your mom this or whatever. It's a very, very common, very common. So that alone right there tells you that kids aren't going to be upfront and open about these things going on if they are going on because they don't want someone that they love to be hurt. So it's a very scary thing for kids, and they don't have anyone to turn to, or they feel that way. They feel like it has to be kept a secret, and she talked about that too, or talks about that secrecy as well.
shared any of the private information you've talked about or the relationship as a whole. They'll threaten harm or revealing secrets as a way to keep you tied to the relationship.
Hmm.
The sixth stage is sexualizing the relationship. And just like we talked about before when it comes to gaining trust, this won't always be done in an overt way at the beginning. But even the smallest thing, like putting an arm over the shoulder, may give the predator some kind of sexual gratification. And these first stages of sexualizing the relationship could just be putting a hand on the knee, rubbing them on the back, linking arms and walking together. It could be things that we don't consider to be sexualized, but the predator is taking it that way. They will also set up scenarios where it's normal to be naked around one another, such as getting ready to go swimming, or being in a locker room and changing before or after a game, or even going to a spa. They'll set up these types.
And this right here specifically reminds me of we're watching the Eric and Lyle Menendez trial, the brothers who are convicted for the 1989 homicides of their parents, but their parents were, their claim is, and I believe them, their claim is that their parents were extremely abusive. And we find, that to be corroborated by many, many people on the stand that testified. However, uh, this type of act, male on male, father on son type of act really wasn't talked about in the 90s when they were when they were going to trial for this. So there were many, many experts that talked about this. And if you are interested in more of the effects of trauma, then I recommend you go look at those experts because they really do sum it up. It's an old video because it's like 1993, but we're re-watching the Menendez brothers trial. All right, so what was I was going to say? This reminds me of the Menendez brothers or the Menendez parents because when the boys would um, play tennis, which was anytime they had free time and they weren't, eating or, whatever, they'd be, and they didn't eat very often because they'd be out playing tennis for hours and hours on end, even like throughout the week, during the week after school, during the weekends. That's all they did was tennis, and the boys and the parents all showered together. So that's one thing here that how they made it, they normalized it. It was just like a family thing. They all took a shower together. Like if you look at it now, you're like, what? That's weird. But for the family, they normalized that.
Types of scenarios so that you become desensitized to being naked around them because you don't think it's something that makes you vulnerable or is dangerous. In the last portion of this stage, if this is a child that is the victim, they will play on a normal child's curiosities and questions about the body and use that to further the sexual relationship and move it into actual sexual touch. And the seventh and final stage of grooming is controlling the relationship. Because once the sexual abuse is happening, all of the things that they've set up, they'll use that as leverage to keep us held in that relationship, whether it's financial. Remember I said they might buy us gifts or give us things we couldn't otherwise get for ourselves. It could be that they have more power over us because they're a boss or a teacher or someone in our life who
Or Stoughton police officer.
can, harm us in such a way. It could also be emotional support. Remember, if they're telling us that they're the only ones that can understand us and everybody else will think something's wrong with us, they've tried to keep everything we do together a secret. And because of all of that swirling around, there can be so much shame associated with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, the person who's been groomed feels like they're unlovable or that they should be embarrassed and they brought this on themselves. But I want you to know that that is not the case. All of these different stages are stages of manipulation
Yep.
and stages of abuse. And
Yep.
know that if you have found yourself in a situation like this, you didn't ask for it. You are not to blame. Nothing that
Mm-mm.
happened is your fault. We find the best way to process through this shame and to heal from the abuse and grooming is to find a therapist who can help. We also find groups to be really, really healing because often we think we're the only one. It was our fault. We brought it on ourselves. But to hear other people sharing their stories and experience, it can be really healing because we realize that we aren't alone, that it's not our fault, and that other people have gotten through it as well. Another reason that therapy can be so healing is that we're able to offer an objective perspective, a different view into what's gone on. Because
It's
like I
true.
said back in those stages we were talking about, that they control the relationship to such a way that we don't even think that anybody else will think differently than what our abuser told us. But the truth is that what they told you was all a lie. And so having someone else come in and be able to talk to you about it in an honest fashion, give an objective perspective, can allow us to finally realize that it's not our fault and that we're not to blame, and we can start that healing process. Another way that therapy can
When you're living it, you can't see the bigger picture. You can't see how it's affecting you. When you're in a situation that's not good for yourself, you can't fully see because you're inside the fish tank rather than outside looking in. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you're the fish swimming around the fish tank, but the therapist is the one that's outside and seeing more of the more of the big picture. And you just can't see it all when you're having this deeply traumatic experience. You can't necessarily even if you are removed from the situation years away, and you're still dealing with it. It's great to have a therapist perspective just to help you process the feelings that you're having, process, the anger, the guilt, the shame, all those feelings, those negative feelings that come with it. A therapist can really help you work through that.
help us heal from this is by teaching us ways to practice self-love and self-care. Often when someone has taken
Absolutely. Throughout my years on this earth, I've always tried to seek answers and seek ways to better myself, and self-love and self acceptance is so important. So that above all, that's like the most important thing. We come into this world and it is human nature to devalue yourself and talk negatively, especially because, you hear somebody else say something negative about you and then that like festers and you allow that to be a part of your psyche, a part of who you are now because you've accepted that personality or that trait. So it really it can affect you completely if you accept a negative trait that somebody else might have put on you, or you just think you're not good enough at something. Um, these can all, um, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is by self love and self acceptance and just understanding like, love yourself, good, bad, the ugly, everything. Everything that's happened to you up until this point, until now, is who you are. It's made you who you are today. Any change in that would change you. So accept it, love it, treat it like it's part of your story because it is. It makes you whole. And anything that does happen to you, just know that you can embrace it and make it part of you, part of your story. It doesn't have to be something that you hide from and are ashamed of and need to feel guilty for. That's society putting those expectations on you, and that's not who you are. So just know that you're valuable and worth it, and you're worth loving.
So much from us, it's hard for us to come back and feel good about who we are and know how to give ourselves the things that we need. And working with a therapist who understands abuse, understands grooming, can be really beneficial because they'll give us the tools that we need in the moment to self-soothe, to practice self-care when it's needed most, and know that we are valuable and people do care about us. I hope that just sheds a little light on what grooming is. The more we talk about this, the less likely it is to happen. If you see a situation,
That's the thing. We need more awareness. When we're aware, then we can shine light on this, and these kinds of things don't need to continue to happen.
unfolding that looks a little off and you have concerns, please speak up. If you are in any one of these stages, know that you're not alone. Please reach out, talk to someone, tell someone. Trust me, whatever that predator or abuser is saying is not true. You have a voice. Use it. You're important and you're lovable, and other people care about you and want the best for you. Don't listen to that garbage. You are worthy. Please reach out. Trust me, it can get better.
Oh, geez. Okay, there was music. I was like, what is that noise? It's music on her thing. I don't want it to keep playing 'cause I don't want to get copyright struck. So, which it's probably too late. But, so there you have it. Those are some good tips on what grooming is and what to look for. So those are, or well, those are the stages she went through. So I'm gonna go through a couple of, like I said, I'm gonna be going back and forth from article um, to video. We're gonna learn today about grooming and grooming behavior, these types of things. So when you're around children, maybe you work with children, maybe you know people who do, you know that there are appropriate boundaries and safe touches that are allowed, and then there are not appropriate touches. I say no touch, but sometimes you have little kids and you have to touch them. But here is some information as to when adults are possibly, these are warning signs that an adult might be possibly interested in grooming or abusing a child. So, when an adult befriends a child with the intention of building an emotional connection that will lower the child's inhibitions and use of safe boundaries, it is considered grooming behavior. This behavior includes gaining the trust of parents and other adults involved in the child's life. So, look at the Sandra Birchmore case, for instance. Um, Obviously, Robert Levine, Divine, sorry, Robert Robert Divine was, I don't know who Robert Levine is. Somebody else, some poor guy that I just accused of something. Robert Divine was the head of the Explorers program, like I said, and he oversaw it. He ran the program and he hired on Matthew Farwell and William Farwell to be the instructors as well. So they were also for Stoughton. They are all former Stoughton police. But at the time, they were all Stoughton police. And these Divine received a letter. That's where I was going with that. Divine received a letter from his mom and or from Sandra Birchmore's mom. I don't know why I said his. From Sandra Birchmore's mom, it stating like, thank you so much, she loves this program, it's really helped her out, all this good stuff, thank you, you're so wonderful for this program, blah blah blah, like really kissing his butt because she thought, I forgot to turn the air fresheners off, sorry. She thought, I'm downstairs because it's like 90 degrees and I don't want to be upstairs when it's hot because my bedroom is upstairs and that's where I usually record. So I apologize for that. So warning signs of an abuser, um, like I said, they try to get close to the parents. So obviously, Sandra Birchmore's mom and this Robert, she trusted this Robert Devine, and why wouldn't you? He's a cop. So you should be able to trust our law enforcement. However, that's not always the case. So she entrusted Robert Devine with her daughter's safety, and look at what they did to her. It is just horrific and awful. He's this trustworthy, charming, I'm sure, cop that's just, making all these parents think this is the greatest program and let you trust your kids with me. And then here they sign up for this program and they become victims of this horrific offense. It's just unimaginable. All right, so this is grooming behavior. This behavior includes gaining the trust of the parents in the child's life to gain access to the child. Being aware of the warning signs can help you keep your child and other children safe. So try to be on the lookout for these things. Warning signs that an adult might abuse a child include insisting on physical contact with a child, hugging, touching, tickling, or kissing, even especially if the child resists. I say especially because there's a reason. Pay attention to your kids. If your kid is like, "No, I don't want to hug Uncle Bob," allow them to not hug Uncle Bob. Maybe Uncle Bob is not being appropriate with your child, or making inappropriate comments with your child and makes them uncomfortable. So don't ignore those red flags. I mean, a lot of children are like, "I don't want to hug," whatever, but sometimes it means something. Sometimes they're just fussy, but just pay attention. If it's a repeated thing, then something to think about. All right, so focusing intently on a particular child, giving them gifts and money, or sharing secrets with them, that's awkward, creepy, pedophile behavior. Uh, pro- Frequently planning outings alone with a child, or often offering to babysit different children. Seeming very familiar with children and children's activities despite not having any children of their own. Yeah, that's very telling and creepy. Making inappropriate comments in the presence of a child or about a child. So if you hear an adult speaking about a child inappropriately, definitely, bring that up. I wouldn't let that comment go. Um, Also, like she had said sexualizing the relationship, which means that, they might introduce adult materials to them, or, talking about adult acts that children should not know anything about. These are things that are you should be looking for. If they're talking about things that is way above their level for, knowledge wise in intimate relations, then probably there's something happening there. I don't want to say probably. I'm just saying, be aware of these. Check it out. These are all warning signs. It doesn't necessarily mean something's happening, but you put them all together and it's probable. Anyways, all right. So frequently plans outings, seeming very familiar with children, making comments in the presence, not respecting the privacy of a child, or downplaying the use of healthy boundaries. So if a child um, doesn't want, I'm trying to think, healthy boundaries, downplaying the use of like, oh, it's okay if I hug you. Your mom won't mind, or your parents won't mind if I give you a hug, type of thing. Not respecting the privacy of a child. So obviously, children, we all want our privacy in in regards to our clothing. We want to keep ourselves modest and what, well, most of us, I think. Some don't, but whatever. We're modest. We want to keep our bodies covered for the most part. Most people. Um, Not respecting that, a parent or a swim coach or somebody, not respecting the sanctity of clothing and privacy, being modest, that kind of thing. That's what to look for. All right. So another thing that is often not talked about as much is other children. So this also happened in the Lyle and Eric Menendez brothers trial, where we find out on the stand. We haven't gotten that far. We're getting to Eric and Lyle. as I read or as we rewatch it, but we're getting to their testimony very shortly. But we will find out on the stand that Lyle, when he was younger, he also did some acts to his brother, basically, and then a therapist would explain it as they're angry and trying to he's still a child and he was angry and trying and confused and trying to process all the feelings that come with all that and the shame and the guilt. So in by doing it to someone else, he took the power and the control back. I think that's one of the experts explained it that way. um, one of the experts in their trial, and it makes sense if you think about it. So other children might be assaulting other children. So often there is a misconception that the SA of a child is solely by adults, but SA can also happen between children as well. According to Stop It Now, over a third of SA is committed by children who are under 18. Children who SA other children may be victims of SA themselves, and that was definitely it's usually the case, I would say. Um, that was the case with Lyle. All right, so warning signs that a child might a another child include exploring curiosity of an intimate nature with a younger child, insisting on having physical contact with another child, even if that child resists, expressing anxiety about being alone with children. That's an interesting one. Expressing an anxiety for a child to express anxiety about being alone with another child. Oh, that might be signs that maybe they don't think they can trust themselves or they don't know how to behave. I don't know why that would be. Why would they be anxious about being alone with other children? Maybe because they don't want to do the SA acts, but again, they don't understand and they're confused and they're trying to take the power back by doing that to someone else, to another child. Engaging in harassment or aggressive behavior or language, and also sharing material with younger children. So, of an explicit nature. So, those were some good. Oh, here is an article that I didn't even look at. Here are some red flags of a predator, and it ouch, it doesn't work. Okay, great. So that's why I probably did click on it and it didn't work. But I gave you some really good info regarding. Um, so we have warning signs of grooming. We have. Next, I want to go to the symptoms or side effects of SA or CA. So, first of all, let's talk about types of types of abuse. So, any intentional harm or mistreatment to a child under 18 years old is considered CA. CA takes many forms, which often occur at the same time. There is physical, which is physical CA occurs when a child is purposely physically injured or put at risk of harm by another person. So, you are purposely slapping, hitting, tossing your kid down the stairs, whatever it is. I mean, just awful, whatever. All right, so SA, we pretty much know what that is, but so child SA is any sexual activity with a child or act or whatever. All right, so this can involve any kind of contact, such as intentional touching, oral genital contact, or intercourse. This can also involve non contact SA of a child, such as exposing a child to SA or rhymes with corn, ography, um, observing or filming a child in a intimate manner, S, harassment of a child, or prostitution of a child, which that also includes trafficking. So that is it can come in many forms. SA. All right. So emotional A is when in emotional. CA means injuring a child's self esteem or emotional well being. It includes verbal or emotional assault, such as continually belittling or berating a child, as well as isolating, ignoring, or rejecting a child. So that even includes neglecting one's neglecting their needs. It doesn't even mean like locking them in a room and neglecting them. It just means neglecting a need that they had. That can be emotional abuse. Medical abuse, medical child A occurs when someone gives false information about illness in a child that requires medical attention. So, like Gypsy Rose's mother, who was the epitome of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She made up tons of medical issues to get attention, garner attention for herself. She got a house out of it. They got trips to Disney World. So there's people out there that are unwell that will make up children and or make up lies about their own children to doctors and have them get on needless surgeries and needless drugs and medical intervention when she was perfectly healthy and normal, which actually stunted her development by doing the things that she did. So that's a little bit about Gypsy Rose. All right, neglect. Child neglect is failure to provide adequate clothing, shelter, clean living conditions, affection, supervision, education, or dental or medical care. So that is any kind of neglect. In many cases, CA is done by someone the child knows and trusts, often a parent or other relative. If you suspect CA, report it to the proper authorities. And these are the symptoms, or I think more appropriately termed would be side effects. This is from the Mayo Clinic, guys. So this particular article is pretty good. All right, so a child who's being aid may feel guilty, ashamed, or confused, and we talked about that already. That is one of the biggest problems, is that the perpetrator, predator, will lie. They'll make the child feel guilty, and they'll make them feel ashamed. They'll, by keeping it a secret, keeping it under wraps. Don't tell your mom that this is happening. And if you do, I'm going to hurt your mom. I'm going to hurt your pet dog or whatever. The child would be afraid to tell anyone about it, especially if the perpetrator is a parent or a relative or family friend, because you don't want to get that person in trouble. That's what the kids will say. That's why it's vital to watch for such red flags as these. This is in the child. So before we were talking about warning signs of the aggressor. Now we're talking about warning signs to look for in your child that might possibly indicate there could be potential or in you. Maybe you're watching this video and you're like, "Hey, this sounds like me." This is a great, I'm hoping to get this video out to as many people as possible to help others to educate, to learn, and to grow from this. So, this would be, again, coming from the child side, withdraw from friends and usual activities, stuff they used to love doing, maybe they have no interest in anymore. Changes in behavior, such as suddenly they become really aggressive out of nowhere. They have anger, hostility, hyperactivity, or changes in school performance. These can all indicate something might be wrong. Any of these things, I would say, definitely, take a closer look at what's going on. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is happening either, but just they're warning signs. These are things your kids are telling you something's wrong, and it means pay attention. All right, so depression, anxiety, maybe they have unusual fears, which might not be so unusual if you think about the fact that the perpetrator might be lying to the kid. So let's say the perpetrator says that there's a ghost in his room watching him all the time, and he'll know if he tells his parents. So now that kid fears a ghost in his room constantly watching him. See? It's an unusual fear or sudden fear that all of a sudden, you can't explain, but if you ask them where that fear came from, if you ask the right questions to the child, you might get answers that can help you understand what's happening. A sudden loss of self-confidence also. Sleep problems, nightmares, bedwetting is a particularly common sign. An apparent lack of supervision, frequent absences from school, rebellious or defiant behavior, self-harm, or attempts at self-deletion. So those are all great big warning signs that I implore you to look further into your child's lives. All right, so specific signs and symptoms depend on the type of A that's going on and it can vary. So keep in mind that warning signs are just that, warning signs. The presence of a warning sign doesn't necessarily mean that your child is experiencing any kind of A, SA or physical, emotional, whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but it's just warning sign. Physical A signs and symptoms, unexplained so physically on the body, unexplained injuries such as bruises, broken bones, fractures, or burns, injuries that don't match the given explanation. So you have a scrape on your arm and you're like, oh yeah, I just, walked into a wall or something, but it looks way more intense than that or something. It just doesn't make sense, the explanation given. And then injuries that aren't compatible with a child's developmental ability. So, um, injuries that aren't compatible with a child's developmental ability. I'm not even sure of how to give an example of that. Okay, so SA signs and symptoms. Behavior of an adult nature or knowledge that's inappropriate for that child's age. Like I said, having more knowledge of intimate relations than they should at their particular age. Obviously, pregnancy or an STD would be a huge sign of SA happening. Um, Genital or anal pain, bleeding, or injury. Also, injury to the mouth, the throat. That's something that in the Eric and Lyle Menendez trial, we learned that Eric had gone to the ER for a soft palate injury to the throat, unexplained. Um, so, yeah, look for things like that. Also, a lot of trips to the ER, trips to the nurse's office, trips to wherever, I don't know. Um, medical procedures, injuries, a lot of unexplained injuries in their past, things like that. Statements by the child that he was essayed or touched inappropriately or something along those lines. Inappropriate behavior with other children, like we've talked about in the other article. Here are signs and symptoms of emotional A. So, delayed or inappropriate emotional development. So, you don't have the ability to regulate your emotions or regulate them. Loss of some might not even be able to like self-actualize and realize, hey, I'm having this emotion, I'm angry, and this is the reason why. Most of us, me included, don't always know where our emotions are coming from, but that emotion is trying to tell you something. So when you have an emotion, don't just react to your emotion immediately. Try to think about, what is this emotion that I'm having? Number one, why am I having it? Number two, and number three, is it necessary? Like, can I let this go? That's kind of a good way to like de-escalate when you're having an emotion, a negative emotion that you don't want necessarily. All right, so loss of self-esteem or self-confidence, social withdrawal, or a loss of interest or enthusiasm. Again, that's like, just being excited about things before that they're no longer excited about. Depression, Avoidance of certain situations. They might be avoiding certain people, certain situations, certain places, refusing to go on the school bus ride. Maybe they're being bullied on the school bus or maybe the school bus driver's a little creepy. I don't know. Listen to what they're trying to tell you. Appears to desperately seek affection. So that might be something, maybe your child wants more. Maybe they're really clingy and they cry a lot. A decrease in school performance and a loss of interest in school, a loss of previously acquired developmental skills. So it might even seem like they're backtracking developmentally. Signs of neglect, poor growth, excessive weight with medical complications that are not being adequately addressed. So they might be overweight, might be underweight, poor personal cleanliness, lack of clothing or supplies that meet physical needs. So they might not have everything that they need. They might be missing school supplies. They might be missing certain clothing or have very limited outfits that they keep coming to school with. They might be hoarding or stealing food. That's a huge sign that they're not getting food at home. Poor record of school attendance, lack of appropriate attention for medical, dental, or psychological problems, or lack of necessary follow-up or care. So that is, the child might get an injury and then they don't go to the ER. You might have a broken arm that never got set or something along those lines. Or a really bad scrape that really should have gone, you should have gone and gotten stitches, but instead parents just let it heal up on its own and huge scar, and it should have been, it could have easily been taken care of medically, but wasn't. Parental behavior. Sometimes a parent's demeanor or behavior sends red flags about CA. Warning signs include a parent who shows little concern for their child, and we know Kitty Menendez did not care for her kids. Neither one of them showed any kind of physical affection or love for their children, but like the mother, definitely. She showed more like disdain for her children than anything. Appears unable to recognize physical or emotional distress in the child, blames the child for the problems consistently that o- obviously, Jose and Kitty blamed the boys for everything. They always belittled and berated them, calling them worthless, evil, other terms like that to berate them, let them know that they're not cared for, putting their self-esteem down. Another a parent who would abuse their kids would also expect that the child provide attention and care to the parent, but not necessarily the other way around. So you feed my ego. The child is there to feed my ego and seem jealous of other family members getting attention from the child. That's possible. Use harsh physical discipline. That's something, that uh, Jose would do. There was an incident where one of the boys, I think it was Lyle, was complaining about a stomach ache, and Lyle like punched him in the stomach as hard as he could and like dragged him over and like threw him up against the wall or something. And then one of the uncles was like, what are you doing? Like, that's way too aggressive for whatever just happened. I don't know. It was such a huge overreaction. And a lot of people had testified that Jose really overreacted. All right. So demands an appropriate level of physical or academic performance. That was definitely Jose. He had not just high expectations, but completely unattainable expectations of the boys when it came to their performance in sports and school and just everything. He wanted them to be the greatest success, to shine or to reflect on him that he's a success. So I think it was only to feed his own ego. But anyways, all right, using harsh discipline, wanting them to be overly successful. severe limits the child severely limits the child's contacts with others. So the boys, Eric and Lyle, I know I keep going back to them, but this is like it's such severe CA that they went through that I mean they have some really I don't want to say good examples, but they have good examples of all of this stuff here that we're talking about. So severely limiting the child's contact with others. He did not let them have friends. He barely let them talk to like family, it was like it was really only family was allowed around the boys and a few friends here and there. Katie didn't like anybody that Lyle dated. Nobody was good enough for him, and they made it known that, certain women that he brought home were not going to be part of the Menendez family. Offering conflicting or unconvincing explanations for a child's injuries or no explanation at all, repeatedly bringing the child for medical evaluations or request medical tests such as x-rays and lab tests for concerns that are not actually being confirmed by the medical professional. So you might be saying, oh, they have all these things wrong with them, and not one test comes back showing that. All right, so physical punishment. Child health experts condemn the use of violence in any form, but some people still use physical punishment, such as spanking, to discipline their children. And why we do this still, I don't know. We haven't learned, I guess. While parents and caregivers often use physical punishment with the intention of helping their children or making their behavior better. So like this is a corrective behavior or correction on your behavior. This is why I'm doing it. But research shows that spanking is linked with worse, not better behavior. You're just going to act worse if you get hit. It's also linked to mental health problems, difficult relationships with parents, lower self esteem, and lower academic performance. So, if you want a good relationship with your kid, I would recommend you don't hit them. And if you want your kids to have better self esteem and mental health, don't hit them, not even a spanking. All right, so any physical punishment may leave emotional scars as well, which I think the emotional scars are worse, way worse, because they're so long lasting. Parental behaviors that cause pain, physical injury, or emotional trauma, even when done in the name of discipline, could be considered CA. So that is good to know. Even if it's discipline, it could still be considered CA. So let's all remember that. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is more red flags and what to look for in a perp. So these are in a perpetrator or an abuser. So again, these are the stages that the video was kind of talking about. So I just kind of want to, these have really good examples I wanted to go through. So targeting the child, perpetrators may target and exploit a child's perceived vulnerabilities, including their emotional neediness, isolation, neglect, a chaotic home life, or lack of personal or parental oversight. So let's say Sandra Birchmore didn't have her father around. We don't know really what his story is or where he was, but we know she was raised pretty much by her mom and her grandma. So maybe they were working all the time. Maybe there were hours throughout the day where she was home alone, and that's why she went to this Explorers program. I don't really know. I don't, I'm speculating here when I'm saying this, but potentially that could have been the case. And those are the people, people that are coming from the chaotic lives and need more in their childhood. They're not getting at home. They're the ones that are going to these Explorers programs, and the people running the Explorers program as the offender is looking at those kids and going, oh, look, he's coming from a broken home. He's going to be an easy target. This girl has only a mom home and she's working nights every night, whatever the case may be. They're looking at their students in these explorers programs and saying, well, that one might be an easy target. I might go for that one. The offender will pay special attention to or give preference to a child. So that's an example. Gaining a child's and a caregiver's trust. We already kind of talked about that. Perpetrators will work to gain the trust of parents, caregivers to lower suspicion and gain access to the child by providing seemingly warm yet calculated attention or support. So maybe it's the basketball coach saying, "Hey, little Jimmy needs a little extra assistance in his uh, foul shots. His what are they called? Why am I totally blanking? Free throw. Like his foul shooting. Free throws. Okay, maybe he needs help with his free throw shots. And Coach Smith is like, let me help little Jimmy. Out of the kindness of my heart, I'll come over and help him after school. And then it becomes, well, you know what? Why doesn't he come to my house? And I've got a basketball court and blah, blah, blah. So why doesn't he come here? I've got a full size basketball court in my backyard, whatever the case is. So that is one way. Um, the perpetrator gains the child's trust by gathering information about the child, getting to know their needs, and finding ways to fill those needs. So for an example is, I saw you reading the new Superman comic. I'm planning to go see the new movie. I can take you if you want to go. It's a great example because it's like, hey, I got money. You're a kid. You don't. I can take you. Come on, let's go see that movie. Ugh. All right, filling a need. Once the perpetrator begins to fill the child's needs, like financially, emotionally, whatever it might be, they may assume noticeably more importance in the child's life. Perpetrators utilize tactics such as giving gifts, flattery, giving money, and meeting other basic needs. Tactics may also include increased attention and affection towards the targeted child. Maybe they're like, oh, you're an only child. You don't get a lot of attention at home. I'm going to give you lots of attention here. I know you love jewelry, so I got you this watch, is an example. Isolating the child of giving a gift, obviously. But you can flatter them, give them compliments, things that, they aren't necessarily getting at home is like, compliments and positive reinforcement. You can start, they might start with that because the kid has low self-esteem already. So it might be like, hey, you're great at basketball, little Jimmy. You just need a little work on this one shot. I'll help you. Isolating the child. The perpetrator uses isolation tactics to reinforce their relationship with the child by creating situations in which they are alone together. One on one basketball coaching, babysitting, special trips. Hey, I'm going to take Jimmy to this basketball retreat that I've got coming up. It's great. Parents can't come or parents don't need to come. I'll just take him by myself. I've got other kids and other coaches coming, blah blah blah. Whatever that might be. Special retreat for basketball or whatever. The perpetrator may also reinforce the relationship with the child by cultivating a sense that they love and understand the child in a way that others don't, not even their parents. So, I really can understand you for your music so much more than your parents ever could. Some kid that writes music because they are angsty at their parents. I really can understand your music so much. I really feel it, like trying to relate to them or something. Sexualizing the relationship. Once emotional dependence and trust have been built, the perpetrator progressively sexualizes the relationship. This occurs through talking, pictures, and creating situations which both are naked, like swimming, showering, whatever the case may be, changing outfits from, your basketball uniform to normal clothes, whatever. The adult exploits the child's natural curiosity and trust using stimulation to avoid. Sorry, hold on. Why is this sentence so hard? All right. The adult exploits the child's natural curiosity and trust using stimulation to advance the sexual nature of the relationship. I don't want to say that word, but an example might be, have you ever done a self kind of pleasure, let's say, and then the parent or the adult says, I can show you how it feels really good. That's disgusting, but you get the example. All right, maintaining control. Once SA is occurring, perpetrators commonly use secrecy, blame, and threats to maintain the child's participation and continued silence. In order to maintain control, perpetrators use emotional manipulation. They make the child believe that they are the only person who can meet their emotional and material needs. Child may feel that the loss of the relationship or the consequences of exposing it will be more damaging and humiliating than continuing the unhealthy relationship. So, by exposing the family secret, the Menendez boys would feel humiliated and more damage would come from that. More anger would come from their father if they exposed the secret. So there are ways that these perpetrators manipulate and control the situation so that it remains a secret. An example, if you tell anyone we both could go to jail, we won't be able to be together, or if you tell anyone something bad could happen to your family. So those are again, some of the stages of grooming and SA, recognizing the red flag behavior. Now that you understand the basics of child grooming, I think we do, how do you intervene if you see grooming behaviors or if your gut is telling you that something is wrong? Down below, we're going to look at some red flags. So, special attention slash preference to a child. Offenders are often seen pressing boundaries and breaking rules, but are rarely caught in the act of abusing a child. When you see a boundary being crossed, describe the inappropriate behavior or boundary violation to the person who has crossed it. Have family rules about when and how adults engage with your children. So if someone crosses the line with your kid, address it then and there. Example, we don't let Jimmy go to the movies alone without a parent, or we don't let Jimmy go to basketball retreats without a parent, or whatever the example. That's funny that it was Jimmy because that's the example I used. All right, so gift giving of any expense, large or small, is a grooming technique used to flatter children and their families into trusting that individual. Yeah. Be vigilant. If another adult is overly interested in your child and family, consider this red flag. Example, it is so dangerous, or I'm sorry, it is so generous that you gave Chloe this jewelry, but we only allow gifts on birthdays. So that would be a good way to counteract someone giving your child a gift that you think is inappropriate. I was going to say something about that. Now I can't remember. Oh, single mothers who might be struggling financially may meet men who have some money and have an ulterior motive on spending it on the family. Be trying to get, they might be trying to gain trust with the family and buy gifts for the kids and potentially, yeah, using that. I'm just using that as an example because it's very often, uh, single mothers raising children by themselves might be in a financial struggling situation where some knight in shining armor is going to come and say that they're going to rescue them financially and pay for things and pay for whatever. Just be wary. That's all I'm saying. Just doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. It might be, people aren't always trustworthy. touching or hugging the child. Perpetrators will test the limits by starting to introduce touch into the relationship. They might put their arm around the child or ask for a hug to see how the child reacts. They may do this in front of other adults. If the caregiver does not intervene or object and the child is uncomfortable, it can confuse the child on what type of touch is appropriate. So teach your kids about how to say no to adults and what appropriate touch is, obviously, and isn't. So, an example is it looks like you are forcing Annie to hug you. She looks uncomfortable. Please stop. We let Annie decide if and how she wants to show affection. And that's a great way to give your child autonomy of their own bodies so that they decide who and when, where they get touched, all of that. Like it's their body, their right to it, and no one should be touching it. So maybe a parent to help them if they're young doing things, but that's about it. All right, so sympathetic listener. When grooming of a minor takes place, the offender will listen to the child when they are excited or upset. So they become a friend, an ear to listen, somebody just a shoulder to cry on. They will start to build barriers between the child and their parents and friends by telling them that they care for them more than anybody else does. Be open with your kids. Let them know that even people they love can hurt them. Even parents, even aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, who you name it. Anybody could be potentially doing these things, which is just what makes it so crazy that we continue to hurt our own family members, but whatever. All right, so tell your children you are there for them and they can tell you anything. Be open and listen to them even when the days are hectic. An example is "Sup- surprises make people happy. We don't want to keep a secret through Okay, sorry. Surprises make people happy. We don't want to keep a secret though because secrets can make people upset or unhappy. If anyone wants to keep a secret, tell mommy or daddy you can tell us anything." So that's a good way to bring it up. Finally, next, offers to help the family. Again, that's, getting in good with the whole family type of thing. The individual will offer to do special things or help the caregivers to gain alone time with the child. Be sure to let the other adults know that you do not approve of them being alone with your child without your permission or knowledge. Check in regularly so other adults know you are watching. An example is drop in unexpectedly on a babysitter. Stay for the entire soccer practice, even until the last child leaves. All right. Finally, one of the last things to look for in a perpetrator would be gaining access via the internet. And I can't remember if it's one of the videos I watched for this or not in prepping for this. I watched a video specifically about, online predators, but uh, family members could use online tools as well. Like it could be like random stranger danger that's on the internet trying to groom your child, or it could be Uncle Bob trying to communicate and groom your child. All right, so perpetrators will often pretend to be someone they aren't to gain access to kids online. They will pretend to share similar interests to gain trust, grooming them online. Know who your kids are talking to. An example of this is monitor what apps your children use and have limits to when and where they can use their devices. Make sure there's so many ways you can like put parental controls on things nowadays too. Perhaps at night, tablets, phones, and computers will stay in your room, or, the parents' room or living room, somewhere where they can't get access to them. So that's what I have for what to look for in a perp, different things. Uh, I have two more sections we're going to go over. This next one is long-lasting effects of psychological effects. So we're going to talk. This is a video we're going to watch. So hold on one second here. So this video is going to talk about this ACEs thing that it was a study that was done. Um, you'll hear about it. They'll describe it. It's ACEs are like, oh gosh, I can't remember now. Basically traumatic experiences. Here we go. Let me just shut up and have them explain it. All right, sorry. I restarted it because it wasn't all lined up and that was bothering me. So here, this is what I was trying to do. Okay, so ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and the impact on the brain, body, and behavior.
A child's experiences early in life are important building blocks for the developing brain.
Oh, shit, there's music in here. It's not gonna. Scratch that. Sorry. Have to shift gears. Didn't realize both of the videos that I had planned have music in them. So I can't play them because of copyright, whatever. So I don't want to get struck. Let's I found a different I'm changing gears slightly, but not really because I already watched these and I thought these were excellent videos and I was gonna play them anyways, or I wanted to play them anyways, but then decided not to. So I brought this one back anyways. So this is her name is Nadine Burke Harris, and she is a pediatrician who she's going to tell you a little bit about that the ACE study that I told you about. She's going to talk about that. So here we go.
In the mid-90s, the CDC and Kaiser Permanente discovered an exposure that dramatically increased the risk for 7 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the United States. In high doses, it affects brain development, the immune system, hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Folks who are exposed in very high doses have triple the lifetime risk of heart disease and lung cancer, and a 20-year difference in life expectancy. And yet doctors today are not trained in routine screening or treatment. Now, the exposure I'm talking about is not a pesticide or a packaging chemical. It's childhood trauma. Okay, what kind of trauma am I talking about here? I'm not talking about failing a test or losing a basketball game. I am talking about threats that are so severe or pervasive that they literally get under our skin and change our physiology. Things like abuse or neglect, or growing up with a parent who struggles with mental illness or substance dependence. Now, for a long time, I viewed these things in the way I was trained to view them, either as a social problem, refer to social services, or as a mental health problem, refer to mental health services. And then something happened to make me rethink my entire approach. When I finished my residency, I wanted to go someplace where I felt really needed, someplace where I could make a difference. So I came to work for California Pacific Medical Center, one of the best private hospitals in Northern California, and together we opened a clinic in Bayview Hunters Point, one of the poorest, most underserved neighborhoods in San Francisco. Now, prior to that point, there had been only one pediatrician in all of Bayview to serve more than 10,000 children. So we hung a shingle, and we were able to provide top quality care regardless of ability to pay. It was so cool. We targeted the typical health disparities: access to care, immunization rates, asthma hospitalization rates, and we hit all of our numbers. We felt very proud of ourselves. But then I started noticing a disturbing trend. A lot of kids were being referred to me for ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But when I actually did a thorough history and physical, what I found was that for most of my patients, I couldn't make a diagnosis of ADHD. Most of the kids I was seeing had experienced such severe trauma that it felt like something else was going on. Somehow, I was missing something important. Now, before I did my residency, I did a master's degree in public health. And one of the things that they teach you in public health school is that if you're a doctor and you see 100 kids that all drink from the same well, and 98 of them develop diarrhea, you can go ahead and write that prescription for dose after dose after dose of antibiotics, or you can walk over and say, what the hell is in this well? So I began reading everything that I could get my hands on about how exposure to adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. And then one day, my colleague walked into my office and he said, Dr. Burke, have you seen this? In his hand was a copy of a research study called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. That day changed my clinical practice and ultimately my career. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study is something that everybody
Otherwise known as ACE, the Adverse Childhood Experiences or whatever.
needs to know about. It was done by Dr. Vince Felitti at Kaiser and Dr. Bob Onda at the CDC, and together they asked 17,500 adults about their history of exposure to what they called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Those include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parental mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was they correlated these ACE scores against health outcomes. What they found was striking. Two things. Number one, ACEs are incredibly common. 67% of the population had at least one ACE, and 12.6%, 1 in 8, had 4 or more ACEs. The second thing that they found was that there was a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the worse your health outcomes. For a person with an ACE score of 4 or more, their relative risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease was 2.5 times that of someone with an ACE score of 0. For hepatitis, it was also 2.5 times. For depression, it was 4.5 times. For suicidality, it was 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had triple the lifetime risk of lung cancer and 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, the #1 killer in the United States of America. Well, of course, this makes sense. You know, some people looked at this data and they said, come on, you have a rough childhood, you're more likely to drink and smoke and do all these things that are going to ruin your health. This isn't science. This is just bad behavior.
No, it's not.
It turns out this is exactly where the science comes in. We now understand, better than we ever have before, how exposure to early adversity affects the developing brains and bodies of children. It affects areas like the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure and reward center of the brain that is implicated in substance dependence. It inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for impulse control and executive function, a critical area for learning. And on MRI scans, we see measurable differences in the amygdala, the brain's fear response center.
Your body changes physically, physiologically. Your body changes when you experience these traumatic childhood experiences. So y- you can literally, like, another thing that I was researched while I was researching this topic was that, for instance, fear can be instilled in you from generations before you. So a good example, I would say, is like, let's say your grandparents grew up in the Depression, and so they were always fearful of being broke. They were always fearful of running out of money. So that fear may transfer from generation to generation to generation, and you might not even know you have the fear. It's built into the DNA of the grandparent, and then they have children, and those children have it in their DNA. So it is insane. All of the things that we've carried on from our parents and DNA for centuries, I mean, it's just been going on and on and on. And we keep carrying these fears and traumatic experiences that we might not have even had. It could have been our parents, and they continue to haunt us unless we face our fears and acknowledge it.
So there are real neurologic reasons why folks exposed to high doses of adversity are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior. And that's important to know. But it turns out that even if you don't engage in any high-risk behavior, you're still more likely to develop heart disease or cancer. The reason for this has to do with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the brain's and body's stress response system that governs our fight or flight response. How does it work? Well, imagine you're walking in the forest and you see a bear. Immediately, your hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary, which sends a signal to your adrenal gland that says, release stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. And so your heart starts to pound, your pupils dilate, your airways open up, and you are ready to either fight that bear or run from the bear. And that is wonderful if you're in a forest and there's a bear. But the problem is what happens when the bear comes home every night. And this system is activated over and over and over again. And it goes from being adaptive or life-saving to maladaptive or health-damaging. Children are especially sensitive to this repeated stress activation because their brains and bodies are just developing. High doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing immune system, developing hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed.
I just realized I was muted. Sorry. I don't even remember what I was saying. It probably wasn't that important.
So for me, this information threw my old training out the window, because when we understand the mechanism of a disease, when we know not only which pathways are disrupted, but how, then as doctors, it is our job to use this science for prevention and treatment. That's what we do. So in San Francisco, we created the Center for Youth Wellness to prevent, screen, and heal the impacts of ACEs and toxic stress. We started simply with routine screening of every one of our kids at their regular physical, because I know that if my patient has an ACE score of 4, she's 2.5 times as likely to develop hepatitis or COPD. She's 4.5 times as likely to become depressed, and she's 12 times as likely to attempt to take her own life as my patient with 0 ACEs. I know that when she's in my exam room. For our patients who do screen positive, we have a multidisciplinary treatment team that works to reduce the dose of adversity and treat symptoms using best practices, including home visits, care coordination, mental health care, nutrition, holistic interventions, and yes, medication when necessary. But we also educate parents about the impact of ACEs and toxic stress the same way you would for covering electrical outlets or lead poisoning. And we tailor the care of our asthmatics and our diabetics.
I mean, imagine educating our citizens of this world, of society. Imagine educating people to let them know, hey, when you treat your kids poorly, it can adversely affect them.
In a way that recognizes that they may need more aggressive treatment given the changes to their hormonal and immune systems. So the other thing that happens when you understand this science is that you'll want to shout it from the rooftops, because this isn't just an issue for kids in Bayview. I figured the minute that everybody else heard about this, it would be routine screening, multidisciplinary treatment teams, and it would be a race to the most effective clinical treatment protocols. Yeah, that did not happen. And that was a huge learning for me. What I had thought of as simply best clinical practice, I now understand to be a movement. In the words of Dr. Robert Block, the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. And for a lot of people, that's a terrifying prospect. The scope and scale of the problem seems so large that it feels overwhelming to think about how we might approach it. But for me, that's actually where the hope lies. Because when we have the right framework, when we recognize this to be a public health crisis, then we can begin to use the right toolkit to come up with solutions. From tobacco to lead poisoning to HIV/AIDS, the United States actually has quite a strong track record with addressing public health problems. But replicating those successes with ACEs and toxic stress is going to take determination and commitment. And when I look at what our nation's response has been so far, I wonder, why haven't we taken this more seriously? You know, at first, I thought that we marginalized the issue because it doesn't apply to us, right? That's an issue for those kids in those neighborhoods, which is weird because the data doesn't bear that out. The original ACEs study was done in a population that was 70% Caucasian, 70% college educated. But then, the more I talk to folks, I'm beginning to think that maybe I had it completely backwards. If I were to ask how many people in this room grew up with a family member who suffered from mental illness, I bet a few hands would go up. And then if I were to ask how many folks had a parent who maybe drank too much, or who really believed that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child, I bet a few more hands would go up. Even in this room, this is an issue that touches many of us. And I'm beginning to believe that we marginalize the issue because it does apply to us. Maybe it's easier to see in other zip codes because we don't want to look at it. We'd rather be sick. Fortunately, scientific advances and, frankly, economic realities make that option less viable every day. The science is clear. Early adversity dramatically affects health across the lifetime. Today, we are beginning to understand how to interrupt the progression from early adversity to disease and early death. And 30 years from now, the child who has a high ACE score and whose behavioral symptoms go unrecognized whose asthma management is not connected, and who goes on to develop high blood pressure and early heart disease or cancer will be just as anomalous as a 6-month mortality from HIV/AIDS. People will look at that situation and say, what the heck happened there? This is treatable. This is beatable. The single most important thing that we need today is the courage to look this problem in the face and say, this is real, and this is all of us.
Yep.
I believe that we are the movement. Thank you.
All right. I loved that. I should have just played that from the start because I think she did a really excellent job breaking down the ACE study and applying it to how her patients were often coming in with things like ADHD or other problems that didn't really have a necessary, uh, source or place where it originated from. It might have been because people were being abused. We don't know. But these, uh, I don't know. What I was saying earlier, about she was talking about that was when my mic was muted. How the fight or flight, she was talking about that and the bear. And it's really great when there's a bear. But if the bear, like she said, comes home every night and wants to start a fight with you or wants to verbally abuse you or physically abuse you, whatever the case may be, you're in a state of like a state of readiness, a state of being ready to fight or to flight if you need to. And uh, constantly being in that state affects your body. It affects your neurons, and you can make new neurons after, you're constantly making new neuron pathways. But if you make certain pathways where you're constantly in fear, that's the pathway, that's what's going to take over. That's what's going to be more predominant in your brain and your neuron patterns. Is that state of fear. And it literally, did I say it? Did I tell you? The DNA literally changes you. It changes your DNA and you can be like I said, I don't know if I was muted during that point when I said that. I think I said that when the mic was okay. About the DNA getting passed down from generation to generation, which I find fascinating. Let me look. I did see a thing somewhere. I had an article. Hold on, I might still have it. All right, I found it. Okay, good. So this is talking some more about the ACE study, and these are some of the negative outcomes that they say um, can uh, the, that can happen, and the greater number, obviously, of ACEs, the greater number of negative outcomes. So this pyramid here starts with generational embodiment, historical trauma. Then it can lead to race, social conditions, or local context, which can cause more issues. Complex trauma, ACEs, and then allostatic load and disrupted neurobiological development. So your body's starting to change. Coping, adoption of health risk behavior. So you learn ways to cope, maybe the self-soothing, maybe the drinking, maybe other things. And then finally, your body becomes burdened of disease, distress. You might even have some criminal uh, problems, some criminal issues that come up. And there's obviously stigmatization regarding a lot of the issues, including the abuse, but not just that, like all the other things that drinking that it's caused you and whatever. Maybe you're abusive too because of it. So who knows? But, and then early death. could also be an outcome finally. So there's a lot of issues with ACEs, especially the more you have, the uh, more problems you may have. I thought this was the best example I could find here of the ACEs. So this is different kinds of abuse that could create this traumatic effect. So we've got physical, emotional, or sexual abuse. Got neglect, physical or emotional. You've got household dysfunction, which could be someone with a mental illness, and maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's not even a parent, but that sibling could be taking all that. That sibling could be having uh, emotional outbursts and things like that, which could cause a difficult a difficult home life, is what I meant to say. I'm struggling with words right now. Um, Next, someone could be incarcerated, a parent, an uncle, an aunt, whoever, a sibling, and that could definitely affect you dramatically. Interpersonal violence, if that's going on in the home, whether you're observing it or experiencing it. Substance abuse and divorce could also, or loss of a parent, so death of a parent, even. Um, and then other things that can trigger these ACEs would be bullying, community violence if you grow up in a particularly dangerous neighborhood safety, racism, and living in foster care or I would say maybe not even foster care, but like an unideal, a non-ideal living situation according to society. Whoever, maybe a grandparent or somebody's raising you and that makes it difficult. All those things could be contributing to these ACEs, or what are they called? Why can I not remember what the A stands for? I don't know. Um, Something childhood experiences. That's what it stands for. I don't know. Anyways, I don't see it spelled out anywhere. It's just referred to as ACEs. So I wanted to share that with you. How many do you have out of these? I don't know what the actual survey or questionnaire was, but just by looking at these, I already could tell I've got like 4 or 5. So I'm up there in the like 12% of people that um, have 4 or more. So just by looking at this, I could tell you I at least have 4.5, 5, if not maybe a little bit more. But anyways, those are your ACEs. Now you have a better understanding. What is this? Okay, so out of 17,337 participants, 69.9% reported at least one of the ACEs, 21% reported 4 or more, 30%, what's that? 30% zero ACEs. So it's 30% said zero ACEs, and then 48.4%, so about half the percentage of people had 1 to 3 ACEs. So that's like the average, I guess. In the middle, right in the middle, is where most people are in this 1 to 3 ACEs. But beyond that, we're the abnormal ones, I think. All right. Out of 1,784 participants, same thing. Or no, not same thing. 83% reported at least one ACE. I don't know why they broke it down like that. But anyways, so I'll give you guys links to these sources that I've put up here because I think it's important to cite sources and to also, if you guys want to do more research on your own, I think that's important as well. So, finally, the last thing I want to talk about are we've already talked about a little bit the long term effect of maltreatment, child maltreatment. We'll go over that once more, and then I want to talk about surviving as an adult of abuse. So, child maltreatment causes physical effects to the body, which we've just talked about. It literally can change your DNA and the DNA of your descendants. So, while your body can heal, the stress of abuse on the body can cause long term effects. If you've developed a chronic health condition, you're not alone. Studies show that child abuse leads to a higher chance of getting a long term health problem as an adult, including migraines, diabetes, arthritis, vision problems, cancer, stroke, bowel disease, heart attack or heart disease, back problems, high blood pressure, and the number one thing that I don't see on here, autoimmune diseases. Your immune system, it gets so messed up and then it causes so many problems later on in life. I can attest to that. So autoimmune diseases in people that have experienced any form of a child, any form of abuse in their life, child, physical, sexual, whatever nature it was of, you're probably going to have some health problems if you haven't dealt with it, you know? So it's, even if you have dealt with it, you still might get health problems. So just warning you. Because we hold our emotions physically inside. A lot of people do, and it can manifest physically because you're not dealing with it. All right, so emotional effects of CA. Abuse can lead to emotional and behavioral effects, which we've also talked about already at length. This happens because toxic stress in childhood disrupts your brain growth and changes its structures. Toxic stress is what happens when your stress response is strongly or continually activated, which happens during abuse and neglect. These changes to your brain can lead to long-term emotional effects which you might experience as anxiety, depression, trouble learning or retaining information, trouble paying attention, focusing. A lot of people who have experienced CA might have ADHD. It's very possible. Memory problems, problems with self control, self regulating, uh, self awareness. Sometimes people who have been abused have no self-awareness either, especially when it comes to like their emotions and how they treat others. Sometimes they might take it out, the feelings that they're feeling, they might take that out on others. So that's something to also look for. And low self-esteem. Severe mistreatment can lead to fear, distrust, isolation. I can't talk. Severe mistreatment leads to fear, distrust, and isolation, and this can affect you into your adult years, affect you your whole life. As a child, you learn survival tactics that helped you cope, but those techniques can interfere with your life as an adult. You might find that you have trouble trusting others and keeping loving relationships. You might feel angry, or you might fight and blame others a lot. It's also common to have trouble with intimacy and communication. You might also have trouble setting boundaries. That's a good one because you didn't have boundaries set as a child, and uh, caretakers or whoever might have gone beyond those boundaries. And so you don't have a you don't know what normal boundaries are. Like that was never instilled in you younger, so you may have trouble keeping people away or telling people no or whatever it might be. You might put up emotional walls, you might be defensive, and you might seek approval from others. That's a big one too. People like trying to get validation from other people, liking them, liking their social media posts, like, whatever. Behavioral effects of CA. CA survivors are more likely to engage in risky behaviors because of toxic stress. And like she said in the TED Talk, you might not necessarily be doing more risky behavior, but if you are, it makes sense because you're used to this level of stress in your body. So when you don't get that stress and you're just like chilling, your body is like, what the hell is this? Why are we so calm? So heavy drinking, many intimate partners, having intimate relations for gifts or for money, using illicit substances, and self harming. Some people can also develop trouble eating and food behaviors leading to an eating disorder. And that might, another part of that might be if a parent maybe harped on their kids a lot about, gaining too much weight or whatever, that could definitely, I could see someone definitely manifesting that into an eating disorder, or a parent who really is concerned about looks and status and image and things like that. I could see someone growing up in a house with a lot of pressure like that to come away with an eating disorder or something like that. All right, so how to heal an adult child CA survivor. So how to heal as an adult CA survivor. The healing process can be painful and difficult, but it's possible to recover. It's difficult to heal on your own, so it's important to find support. Definitely, like I talked about earlier, find a therapist that you can trust. And that's a big one too. If you don't like your therapist, go find another one. There's millions of therapists out there. If the one that you're talking to, you don't feel like you're getting anything out of your sessions, then stop going. Find someone who you can relate to, like just on a personal level. That's all. Someone who you can relate to personally, and then you should be okay. All right. So, since this maltreatment can make it hard for you to trust others, it's possible that you've never talked to anyone about your childhood experiences. Talking about it can really help. Make sure that you choose someone that you feel loved and supported by to share your experiences with. Hold on, the dog needs her blanket. Sorry. All right. Or look for a support group of others who understand your experience. So someone that you feel like you can trust and share your experiences with, or find a support group for other individuals who may have experienced CA. It's good to know that you're not alone and there are others who have experienced what you've gone through or something similar, and it helps to talk to those people and find strength in each other. So it is a really good way to, and you might be one of those people that, 10 years from now, you're supporting the newcomers in the group, and who knows, like it may become something that you become really passionate about if you start going to these support groups. All right. A licensed therapist can also guide you through your feelings and your memories. It's common for children to block out memories of painful events. That's another thing. You might not have known that you were a victim of CA until later in life when you have flashbacks or memories that come back to you, recovered memories. So that's another issue that can happen with this, is that because of the trauma and the pain of the experience, your mind can literally forget it to protect you. So just remember that it's okay and you're safe and you're loved and you're far removed from it, hopefully now, and you are in a better place. So you might have flashbacks. It's not, oh, I skipped this. It's not necessary to remember anything that happened to you in order to heal, but you might have memories come back, especially during recovery. So the more you think back on those days, you might have more memories come back to you. You might also have flashbacks, which are intense memories that feel like you're re experiencing it in the present moment. These can be debilitating. A therapist can help you learn ways to cope, new ways to communicate, and how to recognize what you need. If you think you have a health problem like depression or anxiety, make sure you talk to a doctor about treatment. What can you do at home if you feel overwhelmed by your emotions or have flashbacks? There are a few things that can calm your body and help you express your emotions better. And this says try punching a pillow. I mean, not a bad idea if you're the type of person that needs to physically get your anger out, punching a pillow is a great idea. Or ripping paper to safely get your anger out. Practice deep breathing and noticing the sounds, sights, and smells around you. This is otherwise known as mindfulness. Become mindful. Just mindfulness is just taking a moment out of your day to be like, hey, I'm mindful of my surroundings. I'm mindful of my presence. I'm mindful of everything around me. Taking just the time to be mindful of your breathing in and out slowly, um, meditating, mindfulness. It's very helpful to overcome some emotions. I will say, if you are in a panicky emotion, mindfulness is not a good place to be. If you're in a kind of a panicky freak out, I don't like sometimes it can help, but if your mind is just like you can't shut it off and quieting everything just makes it worse, then don't. I say move on. But because I've had experiences where my meditation sessions just turn into like I start getting more anxiety because my brain like you don't have to turn your brain off when you meditate, by the way. You can just let it go and ramble and do whatever. You don't have to just turn your mind off. It's literally impossible to do that anyways. So, just by taking a moment to pay attention to your breath, pay attention to your surroundings, the sights, the sounds, the smells, all of the five senses. Take notice of those things, and it can help center you and help ground you if you are in a bad or in a um, experiencing some painful emotions. Also, writing your feelings in a journal that's a great way to process. Is just write. Just let it all out. Don't even think about what you're writing. Don't care about spelling. Don't punctuation. Who cares? You don't need it. Just keep writing to get it out because you don't know what's in there, what's in that brain until you write. And then once it's out, like you feel so much better and you're like, I don't even know what I wrote about, but phew, it was good. So give yourself like 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever it takes to just like write out your emotions for that moment in time and whatever you're thinking and feeling. And it can definitely help you. It's a good way putting your past painful experiences on paper and processing them on paper as you're writing it like in a journal is a great way to let those things go finally once and for all. You've written it, it's out there, you can let it go now. So that's another way to do it. Moving your body by gently shaking or dancing when you have fear, anger, whatever, you can change that emotion by changing the mood, dancing. Start, put on some good music and boogie woogie, boogie woogie on down. Expressing your feelings through painting, drawing, writing, or singing. Those are some other things. Just, throw on some good music when you're home alone and just sing your lungs out to whatever song gets you going. And that can help also. Like doing those like little fun things that you forget are fun and enjoying it and be like, you know what? I'm going to blast away this specific whatever song. whatever your favorite song is, I'm going to just blast it in the house and dance. I'm going to do my Tom Cruise moment of I'm in my underwear and my collared shirt, and I'm just going to dance to the music in my sunglasses and socks. So everybody needs a Tom Cruise moment, risky business moment. All right. And then the outlook for adult child A survivors, it's important to remind yourself that these emotions or behaviors are normal. So it is totally normal to behave aggressively if you've been abused in the past. It's totally normal. It let's say it's a normal reaction to be on like a short fuse if that's the case. But it's not normal to it isn't normal to take it out on other people, and you don't want to take it out on other people, do you? I mean, I know I don't usually. I mean, sometimes you might feel better for like a split second, but then you're like, oh crap, I really feel bad about yelling at that person. So honestly, it's much better to deal with it and not allow, like I said, writing it down in a journal, um, and burn it after you write it. Who cares? When you burn it, it's so symbolic of I'm letting this go. It is no longer going to affect me. Burn it, rip it up, throw it out, whatever you got to do. Bury it. Write your letters, write your feelings in a journal. It's so therapeutic. Anyways, as you work through recovery, you will get better at managing your emotions, behaviors, and memories. You will also get back better at caring for yourself and can have safe and healthy relationships the more you work on yourself. If you need help, contact the crisis text line, text HOME, HOME, to 741-741 to speak to a crisis counselor. And that is the last of my presentation. I'm going to lead you out with another video. So I'm going to take you out with that. Let me switch screens here. We're going to watch this video. It's about a 12-minute video. Um, so this is Fire Brown. She is an adult who has healed from CA. She's going to talk about her experience, her story, and how it's possible for adults to heal after surviving something like CA. Here we go. And thank you guys before, I'm not gonna come back on the mic, so I'll let you go out on this. So thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one and enjoy the video. Bye now.